Welcome to the WRAL Out and About podcast. I'm your host, Mark Bergen. Today's guest is a North Carolina native who's living the ultimate out and about adventure. And even though he lives in one of the most vibrant cities on the planet, his content is all about home and what home looks like for real people. Caleb Simpson has amassed a massive social media following by asking a simple question: how much do you pay for rent? Caleb, welcome to the show. I want to start with your North Carolina roots. Uh, what was your upbringing like in North Carolina? That's the reason we're talking here this afternoon.
Yeah, NYC gang, let's go. Thanks for having me, Mark. I'm born and raised in Morganton, North Carolina. It's on the western part of the state near Asheville, just right off of I-40. I'm one of 9 kids, which is pretty crazy from the same parents. I had a kind of unusual upbringing in the sense of like I was homeschooled with a very Christian family. Um, so getting out of the house and trying to go see the world and explore was kind of like something innate inside me because some of my friends were like in public school or doing sports and traveling around, and I was kind of at home a lot or in church. So like this innate um, feeling to want to just explore the world was kind of instilled in me at the very start.
Since the internet never lies, Caleb, I saw that you spent a little bit of time in Fayetteville as well. So you're raised in Morgantown. Um, is my internet research correct, first and foremost?
It's so correct. I went to school at Methodist University in Fayetteville, North Carolina. So I grew up playing tennis, kind of started when I was like 12 years old. And that was kind of my outlet to just go play games. I love playing games. And they had a program at that school called Professional Tennis Management, and it was like a minor. So I kind of just was like, okay, well, I like tennis, and they'll teach me how to like teach tennis and teach at clubs. And I had opportunities to go travel and explore a little bit for going to that school.
So you're in Fayetteville. Then how do you end up in the Big Apple of New York City? Walk me through that.
Yeah, it was there was no dreams of moving to New York City like most people do. So through that program, that tennis program, I studied business and then had that minor in professional tennis management. And I kind of just told the program like, hey, if there's any job opportunities on the business side, because I didn't really want to teach tennis because I know like there's only so much longevity in that. I was like, maybe I can learn more on the business side. Um, an opportunity came with this company called Tennis in Manhattan, and they reached out to the program and they said, hey, we're looking for someone to come manage one of our clubs. Do you have anyone interested in that? Then they called me. Then, I jumped, had an interview, flew to New York City the next day. Then they're like, you're hired. And I was like, oh gosh, I guess I'm moving to New York.
Wow. Wow. So I know you had several different channels. You've tried different things with your video creation. I listened to the interview that you had on the Colin and Samir show as well, the Creator Studio show. Um, can you just walk me through the process of, to what you're doing now, but how you had years and years and years of experience in video creation specifically before you got to what you're doing now?
Yeah. I mean, I just kind of like led with curiosity from the beginning. When I moved, I'd always had a fascination of, cameras and what a camera could lead to exploring and seeing new things and watching people on YouTube and stuff. So when I moved to New York, I didn't have any friends. So I just thought, okay, well, there's no one here to distract me now to say like, oh, let's go to the bar, let's go hang out. Or why would I spend 2 hours editing a video when I can go hang out with somebody? So I just started shooting pictures on my cell phone when I got to New York. And then I shot a video on my cell phone, and then I like downloaded a software and I just started editing it. And then I was like, oh, this is pretty fun. So just in my free time, when I was working at the tennis club for about 3 years, I just like taught myself filmmaking and photography. Particularly, I didn't really want to learn photography. I was just like into video. But then as I sought out mentors and started getting these little gigs here in New York City, everyone's like, well, you need to shoot photos too, or no one's going to hire you. So I was like, okay, well, I need to learn how to shoot photos as well. So kind of the process was I would get off work and then I'd go home and try to learn like one new video transition or like watch one YouTube tutorial and try to apply it every day.
Yeah, and that grind never stops, Caleb, in terms of content creation, in terms of learning new tips, techniques, people to try to get people to consume and watch, but then to provide value to people as well. And that's something where, with your format that you have now with your apartment tours, it gets you really quickly, but you go from, meeting someone on the street to then you are then seeing the inside of their home, and it's seeing a side of them that's just so deeply personal.
Totally. So having spent so many years creating video and, for in the music industry, I helped with a startup. I worked with YouTubers and Instagrammers and all these different people, like seeing different sides of just how we consume ultimately. Um, I realized like a trend that was happening were these men on the street trends. And
Mm.
a YouTuber told me like when I was seeking out information, he's like, make something you want to see. And I was like, I want to see more. I want to see more of these people. I don't want to just see the street interaction. So that kind of led to the question like, oh, can I see inside of your apartment? Like, that's kind of ridiculous. And then we'd get a more personal look and glimpse into someone's life. And ultimately, someone's way more comfortable in their home as well. So I think
Mm.
you get to see like another side of that human.
Just as long as you give me a little bit of time to tidy up though, Caleb, and I'm sure that's something you deal with where it's like, "Hey, I'd love to come see your home, but I wasn't expecting you either."
Yeah, the amount of people who haven't, hung art up on their wall for like a year and a half, and then they say, "Wait, let me get that art up. Let me get that art up on the wall, and then you can come over." You know, that's the real
Uh,
stuff I'm doing here. I'm getting that art on the wall. Apartment's cleaned.
so walk me through, what does your typical day look like from when you wake up to where you put your head on the pillow at the end of the day?
Mm. Well, it changes dramatically from day to day, kind of based off of what I have going on now. But the through line is I'm pretty much up at like 6:30 every day, and I'm like, cold shower, cold plunge, workout,
Ooh.
coffee next. Just because that's like the one thing in my life that's like I can rely on that to be normal, if that makes any sense. It's always there and it gets me going in the morning. Then it's a lot of like emails, phone calls, scheduling. And then I'm off to most likely shoot videos, whatever I have planned for that day. Um, then back editing videos, posting videos. Um, and then kind of how I operate is that I think there's two ways of thinking about getting something done. It's like you could plan it out and plan it for another day, or if the idea hits you in the head, you just do it right then. So a lot of times, actually, from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to sleep, I'm kind of thinking about this thing. I'm like really obsessive about it. So whenever ideas are hitting me in my mind, I'm just like starting to reach out to people or call people or emails or DMs or whatever it is to get a hold of people and get things planned and in motion.
Going to your North Carolina roots, we're in Raleigh, which is in central North Carolina. For anyone who might be watching this or listening to this on a podcast, the idea of micro apartments in Raleigh, have you heard about this at all? And just the reason I ask this is because you've seen so many different people's homes in New York City.
My brother lives in Raleigh, and so I'm there, a few times a year, but I have not heard about micro living in Raleigh at all.
Okay.
Is
Okay.
it happening?
Yeah, it is a little bit. And you have a lot of different a lot of tech companies. Obviously, you have the three schools in NC State, Duke, North Carolina, which makes up the triangle. But there's a housing shortage here, and there's no doubt about that. If you look at the MLS data from real estate, it's gone up a little bit compared to what was a white hot market, say, a year or two ago. But in a normal market, you would have, say, about 6 months of housing stock. It's somewhere between 2 and 3 months right now as it stands. And so what they're trying to sort out, Caleb, is like, okay, if you can only build out, wide so far, you have to start building up to be able to accommodate for the people that continue to move to this area, because it is a beautiful state. And that's something I wanted to talk with you about, just considering, you live in the biggest city in the country, in New York City, that I'm sure you've seen people live in a lot of different creative ways to be able to make it work. And what can be anywhere from a very small space to, somewhere that's super extravagant with the different tours that you've done.
Totally. Um, I think it would be hard to be kind of accepted in Raleigh or just
Yeah.
North Carolina, more like not big cities. Um, just because like you think about space, I think there's a lot of like social pressure around space and where
Mhm.
you live and status of sorts. But the more I look at homes and see how people live, I think it's like ultimately up to you and how you want to live and like what fits within your lifestyle. It was actually super interesting, like going to Hong Kong recently and touring like really micro apartments there because none of them have dryers in their homes. They like are in their micro apartments and then like hang drying their clothes just in their apartments. And that's just like the norm there. So it's just interesting to see like what's accepted in society and what isn't accepted in society. But I think for like younger people coming out of college, like starting to join the workforce and stuff, I don't see why they wouldn't dislike it. Like they're probably coming from dorms or kind of small living anyway. So if it's a more affordable option and it like kind of gets them, on their feet, I don't see anything wrong with it.
Are there any places specifically in North Carolina that you would like to tour? I know that you've taken your idea outside of New York. You just got back from Hong Kong. I know you've been out in California as well. Is there anywhere in North Carolina you'd like to go?
I haven't looked into it that much. The Biltmore House is like, an iconic home that I think everyone loves to an extent. So it would be fun to kind of like do something creative and wild with them. I think that would be really fun. Also, like I feel like small homes, like for Airbnb and stuff like that, has
Mm.
really been popping up in North Carolina as well. Like just like micro living in general and tiny yurts and stuff like that. That's interesting. Um, and then after that, just like maybe some of the more of the like the rural like countryside areas, because like having born and raised in North Carolina, kind of from the country, but it's like very different based off of where you're at in North Carolina. So
Yeah,
it could be interesting.
absolutely. You mentioned the Biltmore. We got to fill the pool for when Caleb Simpson gets his tour. I know they have the grand pool in the basement.
Yeah, yeah. Do they fill it up ever? Or?
I know obviously they used it many, many years ago, probably decades ago. That's a great question, but when you're coming, it's just like that should be part of the pitch.
Yeah, part of the pitch. Let's go.
Okay, okay, great call on the Biltmore as well. Let me see here. I want to go back to when you were first starting too, and I know it was a friend who finally said yes to you, and then an interview I listened to you do saying, you weren't even sure that it was going to work until you clicked upload and saw how many people viewed your very first apartment tour. How did you handle the no from people, though, the rejection from people, not to take that personally and then to move forward? How did you deal with that, Caleb?
Yeah, honestly, I think just getting so many no's in your life, you build up thick skin. Up to that point where I was trying this series, there's so many setbacks, there's so many things you're trying and so many things you fail at, that getting no's like just become easier and easier and easier. Um, it definitely doesn't really get under my skin at all now. When I get a no, I'm just like, oh, I'm closer to a yes now. But that first day that I did it, like I thought it was a good idea, and I did feel defeated that day. I was like, damn, like no one really wants to do it. But I kind of just try not to lean into that feeling and just like let's just keep asking. Like ultimately, somebody might say yes. I think putting yourself out
Did,
there.
did you see him? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, Mark. I was just saying like putting yourself out there as much as possible, I think is the key. Like I've done tons of different challenges and videos and stuff that like really challenge the landscape of asking people for things or for help or what the world, if you push at the world a bit, how will it push back?
Not that you need validation, but at what point did you see like, holy cow, this is actually working?
Yeah, it was the first upload of the apartment tour series that I've been around the internet long enough and I've gone viral in a lot of other ways as well over the years. And I just had never seen it kind of explode the way it exploded. So I was like acutely aware, like, oh, this is the thing. Like I knew it right away.
Wow. Wow. And I know you know this. That's not typical of any kind of content that you produce online. I know you know this, Caleb, but for other people out there, it's like, oh, I can just snap my fingers and it'll work. That's not typical.
Yeah, it's not typical at all. I mean, there's lots of nuances that go into it. There's a lot of psychology that goes into it. There's a lot of like format and packaging that goes into it. But yeah, it's just been like years of trial and error. And yeah, it's still hard to kind of like fathom even now, just being like, oh yeah, my video just had like 50 million people saw it. Like that's like there's like echelons of like creators that like kind of reach that
Yeah.
pinnacle, and it's still like I don't really get it. I know it's happening, but I'm like, wow. All I can say is wow.
Well, one thing I want to make clear too with doing this interview and other interviews I've seen you do, Caleb, is I'm not sure if you're familiar with Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hour rule, where clearly you've put the time, effort, and dedication towards other projects. And then to say, well, no, let me fold my hand to finally find something that actually works and something that you enjoy doing. That comes across in the content that you produce. I mean, it's as simple as, when you're flopping onto someone's bed during your apartment tours, that's like the staple of some of the videos that you produce.
For sure. Yeah, like kind of how that idea came about is like I knew once I was in somebody's home, if I was able to get access, I was like, I need to treat this person like my friend. And then what could I do inside the home that would be like silly and fun and kind of like push the boundaries of what they would be okay with and what the internet would like. And I thought like taking a shower or jumping in their bed, like that would be kind of ridiculous. The shower takes a bit more time and effort. So I was like, let's see, let's start the bed one.
What would you say is the favorite part of a home tour? I'm sure it's a little bit dependent on the home, but
Yeah, I think it really goes back to the people. It's really fun to just be able to get to know a new person every day and kind of hear their background, and you kind of know like their hopes and their dreams and what they're working on and their backgrounds. And kind of second comes the home because like the person is like the identity of a home in general, unless they like designed the home, but most of the time somebody else designed it and then they created it, whatever little world that they live inside. So getting to know the person and then seeing the home after that, like correlating the two is pretty fun. And obviously like just shock value is always hilarious. Like walking into like an extremely small space and just being like, how do you live in here? Or a mansion of sorts. It's just like, wow, you actually live inside this giant mansion. Like I can't even fathom.
what is the craziest home you've toured?
Craziest home I've toured. I think it's on two sides of the spectrum. One, I was in Hong Kong recently, and they have like around 250,000 residents that live inside these super, super tiny homes, little apartments, like up 10 flights of stairs and then down these winding hallways. And it feels like third worldly, almost like a war is going on, to be honest. And like some people live in these stacked cage homes. So it'd be like a cage stacked here, 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 and like three people live in those. So just seeing that and observing that and seeing how some of these people live, that was just like, wow, I'm in shock. Some people live like this. And then on the flip side, I went into a mansion recently in LA. That video is not released yet, but it was a Game of Thrones, Harry Potter, Alice in Wonderland themed mansion. That yeah, he had like a throne in the living room. I mean, the ceilings were, it felt like you were in a church, like his whole home. So just like walking in there, I was like, this is just crazy. It feels like an event space, you know?
When are you releasing this video? Do you know yet, or can you say yet?
I think it'll be in like a month.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What was there like memorabilia from, whether it was Harry Potter, Game of Thrones? Was there a piece of memorabilia that stuck out most to you in this home that you saw?
Yeah. So one was the throne. It was like a custom built wooden throne with like hand carved wooden swords, like all etched into the throne ultimately. Like if you can imagine like what a king would sit on, that's exactly what it was.
Mhm.
And then he like got all these like 100-year-old basically like wooden cabinets that were just insane, just like stacked around. Just the detail of all the things he went through importing from different countries and all these absurd things. He put like $7 million into detail. So we'll put it that way.
So the New York City apartment tour guy meets the king of the North, if you will.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And he had a big beard and a mohawk, so he fit the vibe.
I cannot wait to see that video. Let me flip this on you now, though, Caleb. What's the craziest thing that has happened to you on a tour?
Craziest thing that's happened on a tour. I think I need to table that question. Think on that one for a second.
No worries. We could either come back to that, totally understand. We were talking earlier about validation, Caleb. I don't know the best way to ask about touring Barbara Corcoran's home. I've listened to other interviews that you've done. Please just take the reins here. Just one thing that stuck out to you. Take this in any direction that you'd like, but getting to tour one of the Shark Tank members' homes had to have been a highlight for you with this video series.
Yeah, for sure. It was, I was like walking down my stairs, which are right over there. And I was like looking at Instagram, and then I just like got a DM from Barbara Corcoran. And I just like looked at my roommate Haley, and I was like, Barbara Corcoran just DM'd me and wants me to come tour her apartment. And she's like, what? I was like, I don't know what's happening. Like, this is so wild. And then we just set it up. Yeah, it was definitely like a catalyst moment. I am so like grateful for her to have been paying attention and asking to do that, because it was really like a tipping point for me. Meeting her and doing the tour and everything was great. All the press we got around it, but there was like 2 value points that I learned from that whole experience. And one was like, no matter your age, if you want to play in these worlds and participate, you should never stop paying attention and reaching out, because she has all the money she needs, all the shows, everything, and she just wanted to participate and like messaged me herself at 70 years old. So I was like, whoa, like, I'm in my 30s, like I should be doing this the rest of my life. So that was like a value point. And then, yeah, just having done that tour was basically a green light for like the rest of Hollywood and the world. It was like, all right, she did it, and it did 100 million views. Like, it's only good news for everybody. So,
wow.
yeah.
Did you think it was like a fake at all when you first got the DM where you're like, wait a second?
No, not at all. I was like, this is legit. I like started talking with her assistant. And then, with these things, I know like acting quick is the most important thing. So I was like, whatever you need, let's like do it as fast as we can. Because people who, are in Hollywood or, big business people, they have tight schedules. So just getting that done can take a lot of time.
I read that she then got an offer on her home based on the tour that you did. Is that true?
That's very true. Yeah. So obviously after I was curious what happened. So I was like, I emailed her assistant and I was like, what was the reaction? And I was like, did she, grow her social accounts? And she's like, yeah, they grew by like 150,000 new followers, made like major press and news. She was like being interviewed everywhere. Like, I saw an interview of her on the Rachel Ray show. And she said, like, I went to Trader Joe's the next day, and, everybody in Trader Joe's was like, I love your house, Barbara. And she was just like, what did I just take a part in? Like, this is crazy. How did everyone see that? Yeah. And then she got an offer on her house as well, which she didn't want to sell, but she told me, like, I'm pretty sure he would have been willing to pay anything. So,
wow. What responsibility do you feel knowing that, to where, okay, with Barbara Corcoran, you had 150,000 followers, with other people you've helped, again, reading another interview where you helped someone sell art for whatever it is that their interests do. How do you take that responsibility with what you're doing now, just to make sure that, you're doing that for good? How is that for you as a YouTuber, as an influencer?
yeah, it's very different than how a lot of other people operate, because I'm basically giving people a platform, and it's more of giving them an opportunity to show off whatever they want to show off. Um, So there can be a lot of different pressure situations where people want to do things, or they're trying to like back me up against the wall to like, I don't know, be on the show ultimately. But I do a pretty good job of vetting people. I've just been in the industry for a long time, so I see the key signs of like they're just trying to do it because they, I don't know, have alternative motives. So really, I just kind of I do a quick scan of like what they've already done online, what their career is, and then you kind of have an idea of what they're trying to get out of it, and then from there, I kind of make judgment calls. Yeah.
All right, I've got to ask you, because we mentioned Barbara Corcoran before. How's your goal coming along? Trying to get the GOAT, Oprah Winfrey, on. How are you coming along with that goal, Caleb?
You know, that's a slow one. It's a slow one. There's lots of conversations going on around it. I definitely bring it up as much as possible when I'm in certain circles. It's always mentioned, you know, it's been mentioned to someone that knows Oprah Winfrey, and I was with him, and he's like, "Well, that makes complete sense. She should just do it." And I was like, "I know, but like, I need someone to tell her that, or I need to get on a call or something. Really, it needs to be shaped around a narrative or a message that she really wants to spread. And if that moment comes while this series is still popular, then I think it would happen. But you know, there's a lot of stars need to align.
Well, Rome wasn't built in a day, but you are right, Caleb, that it's about relationships. And my end with you is I was able to find an email on one of your social profiles. I sent an email and said, hey, you know, there's the North Carolina connection here. Would you agree to come on? And you were gracious enough to get back to me really, really quickly. I think by the next morning, and here we are. But it's about relationships to where, you know, if we ever have the opportunity to speak again, we can then reference back to, you know, the seed that we planted now here speaking this afternoon, to where, you know, later in life, you never know what that can potentially lead to.
Totally, totally. So now you can see I respond quick. That's my thing. I'm like, let's do it. Let's go.
Why not? Let me see. Where do you go for honest feedback to your content? Because you want to be cognizant of what people are saying in the comments. Sometimes people can be keyboard warriors, but where do you go to say, hey, this is working? Hey, this isn't? Do you have other friends that are YouTubers? Sorry, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but where do you go for feedback, Caleb?
Yeah, that's a great question. Where do I go for feedback? Well, I know what's right and no one else does, so there's just that. I'm kidding. Really, I do have a lot of friends in the space, and a lot of people that I work with who have been in the space a long time. So a lot of times I'll reference them. I'll just send them the videos and just be like, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And typically they'll give me like honest feedback, like what I should cut out, should I post the video, this, that, or the other. Um, as far as like keyboard warriors go and comments, I do read through them, but I'm mainly looking for like a through line theme, versus like we love it, we hate it. I'm just looking for like a collective like consensus. And then whether that collective consensus, whether I decide to use that information or not, is neither here nor there. But I think it's important if the audience is, you know, really leaning one way. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, well, maybe I can add that in. For example, a lot of people wanted to know, like, what do these people do for a living? And sometimes I add that in the video of them saying it, but there's only so many seconds I can use in a video. So a lot of times I'll just like start adding it in the captions, or
Mm.
I'll add more details in the captions. So if people really want that information, they can like go read about it.
Well, especially in trying to get someone right away and their attention right away in the first 3 to 5 seconds is something where in news, it's tough sometimes because they're scrolling to the next thing and it might not even be related to the subject topic that they came across your specific video for.
For sure. And a lot of comments and stuff on the internet, they're just like based off of like one video, one little thing, and then they're just like, here's my opinion. And it's just like there's a lot more that goes into it than that.
Just personally, Caleb, I've noticed that people with some of the nastiest criticism, and then it's like you click their profile, it's like, oh, sweet, 10 followers. And it's just like, it's easy to criticize
Yeah,
when, when, you know, you spend hours and hours and hours, the pre-production, actually shooting, the post-production, everything that goes into creating a piece of content. And again, putting yourself out there.
for sure. For sure.
Let me see here. Just a few more questions for you here, Caleb. What inspires you? Like, what's your ultimate goal? But what is your inspiration behind this series?
Yeah, so kind of how I was talking about at the beginning, kind of just my upbringing and wanting to explore the world. Like I remember telling my mom once when I was a kid, like I want to be an explorer, and she said everything's been explored, like all the land's been explored. So I kind of had this like the Goonies is like one of my favorite movies, which is all about like adventure and treasure
Mm,
hunts and helping their family and holding down a home. So I think a lot of that has really stuck with me, and I've always wanted to, just go out there and learn more and see like what are other ideas out here in the world. What do people care about from different countries or different backgrounds or different states, other ways of living and just thought processes in general. So I think that's what really motivates me and drives me is just learning more about people and how to live. And I know that's why a lot of people say they'll be like, "What do you think about like interiors of homes?" And I'm like, "It's always about the people. That's what I'm most curious
mm,
about."
mm. Shout out to Chunk in the Goonies. You mentioned a movie of my youth, Caleb.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Plus, also on top of that, out of my own curiosity, I just like I've always wanted to figure out a way to play for my job. That's why I taught tennis for so many years.
Mm,
And just to be able to have like lean into my personality and just goof off for a job. I mean, it is a lot of serious work, but like within my work I get to like be playful and joke around and ultimately just like have a lot of fun. So
Do you want to continue your video series with its current format? I know you've started to explore different cities throughout the world. What are the next steps for you?
yeah, so next steps, um I really want to treat what I'm building as a variety show. So the home tours is a variety show. I have like the pizza reviews I do with like celebrities or internet guests. I started like a cash cab dupe sort of type of series where, I pick up New Yorkers and we play trivia games and, name that TikTok song. Things like that are just like fun. Um, Really just like playing on different ideas that I have to live inside this kind of world that like regular people can play in, celebrities can play in if they want to. But really just including the community is like the biggest thing. I kind of look at James Gordon as the model. He came in with late night and decided like, I don't want a regular late night show. Like, yeah, we have like the sit down talk, but then let's play games. Let's have fun. Let's try new things to, ultimately promote Hollywood. But my version of it is to, bring regular people into it because I think they are more of the stars than stars themselves at this current state of the world and what we really care about. It's more real, raw, and authentic. Yeah, and then there's some, chit chat about, different potential TV series and docu series or about homes and stuff like that. So.
Mm, mm. You mentioned TikTok as well. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you this. You would be okay because you have amassed such a big following on both YouTube and Instagram. I wanted to get your thoughts from the creator perspective too, of discussion about how the government's considering a ban on TikTok here in the country. I'd just love to hear your thoughts about this.
The TikTok ban. Since I've been on TikTok, it's been a conversation. I think it bothered me
Mhm.
a bit more earlier on because like that was like the platform I was having traction on, and I was like, oh no. Um, Really, I think personally it would be a bad thing. I've like researched it, and I just think 150 million people like the platform. You can
Mhm.
figure out a way to keep it, and people like to use it. Um, but that's not my decision at the end of the day. So I understand things come and go and things will ultimately end. So all I want to focus on is like making the best content I can and spread it everywhere. And at the end of the day, all platforms will most likely die and you must evolve. And the short form video concept might not be a thing that we really like this quick cut, fast paced, like in your face content. So that's really why I just keep experimenting and pushing my own boundaries of
Mhm.
what I think would be fun and interesting. So I don't ultimately get pigeonholed into, I did this one apartment tour thing and now that platform's gone and it's over,
Well, I think all of the social media platforms end up copying each other too, to whatever new concept, whatever new thing that they have. I remember Snapchat came out and then it's like, okay, Instagram has its version of the stories. And it's like they end up, whatever is successful,
Mhm.
they end up copying. And then, because you're competing for everyone's attention. So it's, how do you get someone's attention? How do you keep their attention? Then how do you grow that attention and grow a loyal viewing audience?
Definitely. It's interesting because a lot of the platforms like evolve in different like age ranges. So like, a lot of most people on Instagram, they don't go to TikTok, or most people who watch
Mm.
YouTube Shorts, like they don't really watch TikTok. Facebook Reels, like that's an older demographic. So a lot like when Facebook Reels launched, like these people are getting hit with content they never even seen before, even though it's been around for a long time. So it's in Snapchat as well as like a much younger audience. So thinking about it from that perspective, I just look at it as like different audience demos. Like, some people don't like Facebook or some people don't like Instagram. So even though they are copying each other, they are bringing value to the people who are on that platform. But I think who's going to win is the people who are like innovating and pushing for creators to make, the best content they can make and reward them. But on that note, also, I do believe the American society spends way too much time on social, and we care about it too much, and we scroll too much, and we consume too much, and don't really live our lives. And I've fallen into that trap more early in my career, but now I'm more about creating content and having more real experiences. I never understood why celebrities didn't have any followers and like let their management team do it all. But the deeper down the rabbit hole I get of, the sort of like little bit of fame or followers or whatever it is, I start to get it. I'm like, you know what, this isn't life, you know?
Yeah. And that's important to note because I see the time and attention that younger audiences. Personally, Caleb, I'm 29, I'm turning 30 in a month. And I personally don't use TikTok, but I'm also aware of, you look at Gen Z, that's the platform that they use consistently tenfold more than other platforms. So, how do you reach what's a younger audience there, an audience to where a lot of trends come from? And, if it ends up getting banned, I think that audience then, okay, where does that audience go? Or if the US forces TikTok to sell off to an American company, then you know, you keep a platform that already exists, that already has so much time and attention already as is. And I could show you various charts that prove what I'm saying. But it's resonating with an audience and posting content specific to that platform. And you're a great person to talk to about this too, Caleb, because you've got more than 7 million followers on TikTok. On YouTube, you've done a hybrid of your longer form videos, but also posted as shorts, and then your Instagram reels too. So you've got, experience producing video content that's a minute or less, or you've got the longer form video, which you can see a little bit more detail. Knowing how to do both, I think, is going to be the name of the game because, especially earlier this year, you take YouTube shorts, for examples, where they just started monetizing that. That can be, okay, are you a short form video creator or are you using short form video as a brand extension to get someone to your long form as well? And this is what creators are going to have to figure out, publishers are going to have to figure out, media outlets are going to have to figure out in 2023 and beyond.
Definitely. I think what you noted on there was like media companies and publishers and all of that is a much more interesting dichotomy than the creator. So I think the creator is always thinking about that, but like news outlets are starting to have to think about it. Even celebrities are really starting to play in these worlds more than they ever have before. And it's interesting to see everyone's approaches, and like it's almost like the creator, the person who's been doing it for 5-10 years, they're now the experts of media. They're the experts of culture. They're the experts of how to be seen. So a lot of these companies are like bringing in creators to like help guide or coach or consult. So it's just been an interesting shift, definitely.
What advice would you give to media companies in the sense that, like, Caleb, what I struggle with is, we produce 11 hours of programming here at the station each day, but the news cycle is so quick. You used to hear a 24-hour news cycle. But really, it's like, I would argue it's even less than 12, maybe even 6, where something happens, you get a notification on your phone. Everyone's got a phone. And I guess my question is what advice would you give to a news outlet, considering like some of the most successful YouTubers create content that might have, might be a video you produced a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, that still has value now? How do news outlets do that for the sustainability to where we can create video content that still provides value 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now?
Yeah, really think it's all about packaging for the platforms, understanding like evergreen content that can last, and picking out those topics and researching those topics and maybe guiding some of these videos towards that, where you're like, okay, maybe one video a month we focus on this topic because we realize like the longevity of this video may be like 5 years. Then you make content that, is like for the week or for the day. That's kind of how I look at short form content. It's like, no one's going to see this again. I mean, the shelf life of short forms, maybe like 3 months. And even more than that, it's kind of like really gotten to a point where, you can create these long form videos like you're making right now and structure the long form so you can cut all these short form clips from it, with proper hooks and titles and segments of like, this is 30 seconds about this topic that people will be interested in. Then you can like blast out all those short form clips and kind of like push the viewer back to the long form if they really want to watch that. And then lastly, I believe like bringing in someone who, is an expert in the space is like the best thing you could ever do. And I really think a lot of people are like attached to a figure or a character. So giving like a character or a figure like kind of free reign to like represent kind of, the station or whatever it may be, or maybe it's a bunch of characters.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Caleb, is there anything I haven't asked you that you would like to get across in this interview that I wasn't smart enough to ask?
I mean, if you out there are trying to make content or whatever it may be, it's like never an overnight success. And if it is, that's probably bad because there's so many things that you still need to learn and figure out. And ultimately media, as you know, Mark, is ever evolving. So you just need to be able to evolve with it. So what I kind of tell all my friends, when they're talking to me or acquaintances about, like videos and they want to go viral and they're like, oh, I want this to happen so bad. I'm like, if you really love it, like you're going to be doing it your whole life. Like that's kind of my thought process is I just like love making videos and connecting and trying out new ideas. So stop looking at it. So it's like a small window and understand like, you have like 10 years, like just keep working at it. And then you'll outlast everybody else because they're all like, oh, I didn't go viral this week, I quit,
Caleb, thank you so much for your time. Someone with North Carolina roots as well. I wish you all of the best. And thank you for taking the time this afternoon on the WRAL Out and About podcast.
Yeah, thanks, Mark.